Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone's over there. What a horrible, horrible start to Sunday. The weather is disgusting. I hope you're all happy now. They're doing the things that you love and those you love to do them with. I'm over on the Top Golf. It's almost like a top swim at the moment. It's horrendous here. No snow though. Where's the snow? I was promised snow. Guys, smash the like button if you enjoy these horrendously awkward. I feel like one of those journalists going, oh, the wind is so strong. Oh, and there's a guy walking past in the background wearing shorts and a t-shirt. They lie to you, the journalists. Not here, not here. Well, we try to keep it as balanced as possible. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell, drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. Guys, first and foremost, the day after the game before, I always like to reflect on whether I feel the same way I did in my post-match initial analysis. And whether or not I have calmed down if I was angry or whether I feel differently, etc. And the first thing I'll say is, shout out to the Newcastle fans. It's not usually something that I concern myself with when I'm doing the post-match show. I don't always sort of remember that there's a chance, I guess, that fans of the other team want to come on and see how the opposing fans feel about the game. Newcastle fans are a great bunch generally. They very much always want to come over and check out. And I remember on Sean Butler TV when I did some content about PSR and FFP, and I was saying things about the rules and how Newcastle United are going to get either incredibly lucky and it's not necessarily fair on everybody else, or they're going to be screwed over by the door closing around the rules are the people that have already benefited in the past after the horse has bolted. And Newcastle fans do frequent other people's channels. So shout out to you guys, because I think most of you thought that I was making a reasonable attempt at sort of fair discourse about the game. Some of you said, oh, you know, sore losers, and I was complaining about the injury time situation. I don't think I was complaining about the injury time. I actually said I think the 10 minutes were fair, but that in the 5 minutes of the first 10, there was only the ball in play about a minute and stuff. So I wasn't really complaining, I was just making an observation that I'm not entirely convinced it was a fair distribution of minutes. But I certainly wasn't blaming Newcastle for utilising a very, very clever strategy, which is something I always give Newcastle credit for. And by the way, I love Newcastle. As a football club, I remember back in the day when you had the likes of Kevin Keegan in charge and players like Tamuri Ketspire and these guys, Faustino Asprilla. You guys were a breath of fresh air, and watching you guys on telly and even going to St James's Park, the overarching thesis was always that it's just a brilliantly supported football club, a one-club city, and you know I love everything about Newcastle's like vibe and love and passion for their football club. And big fan of yours, and I really hope that Tottenham and Newcastle make it to the final of the Carabao Cup, because I think it would be awesome to see a new name outside of the Big Six, or Big Five really, sorry, get on a cup for the first time in a while. It's been too long. So shout out to you guys, but I certainly wasn't complaining about Newcastle's strategy. What I was probably complaining about was the referee getting things wrong in the first half, setting the wrong precedent for me, which then created an environment where Newcastle that are smart enough are going to take advantage of certain things that the referee has let go. And I think that I don't think it's unreasonable to say that there's a couple of players, Joe Linton being one of them, Dan Burn possibly as well, that on another day, I can't remember how to throw a ball here, on another day could have been sent off. So my kind of annoyance was more with the referee than it was with Newcastle. Newcastle were just doing their thing, and fair play to them. But a good game of football, and like I say, Newcastle for me have got one of the probably the top three best forward lines in the Premier League, and outside of Liverpool and Manchester City. And I wish you well with your pursuit of top four this year, guys. I really do. But apart from that, I think the reaction that I put out there, I still feel the same about. You know, I woke up this morning. Of late, I've been kind of, you know, I think after the Wolves game, I think it was, I put out quite a kind of a nasty reaction to Ange Postecoglou, and I reflected on it and thought I was probably over the top. And I think I always try to reserve the right to kind of say that, well, look, emotions are, this is getting soaked, I'm not sure if this is a good idea, that emotions are kind of peak after a game and you're going to say things that maybe you reflect on differently afterwards. Anyway, with yesterday's performance, I don't change my mind. I was proud of the boys. I can't actually believe some of the kind of the content that I've seen around the space that are kind of just doubling down on this. Woe is us. Everything's horrendous. There's never been as bad a team, never been as bad a manager, never been as bad a Tottenham Hotspur generally in like 60 years. Some fans I'm seeing saying, and I just like, well, we're just not watching the same game, and I don't think we're baking in the same context. But each to their own. I don't say anyone's wrong, and no one's ever wrong. It's just an opinion. I'm just surprised that people feel so violently differently to how I do about what happened yesterday. I think the boys were playing for the team. They were up against a really good team in Newcastle United, a game that everybody was predicting that we would lose, for the most part, and and that they were expecting, especially when they heard about Brandon Austin and the virus, they were predicting things like 4-5-0, and it wasn't like that at all. As I said, I think Tottenham deserved the win. Deserved the draw. I'm not sure if I agree with Ange with his take that we would have won on a different day with a fair and even playing field. I think that's maybe just him and his emotions coming out, where right now he feels like the world's against us. And you know what? Oh, Bugsy's doing a poo. I better pick that up afterwards. For me, the overarching, I would pick it up right now, guys. I know you're probably going to say, oh, we'll bet he doesn't. I will, but this is one take Tottenham, so you've got to let me finish the one take, and she's okay. I think the thing about Ange right now, and this is just one criticism of him, is that he makes it incredibly, I've said this 1,000 times, he makes it incredibly easy for people that want to point their finger at the manager to be able to do so by the things that he says and the kind of the philosophical approach that he takes, that therefore sort of dilutes some of the ability to kind of point to the rational explanations as to why we're going through such a hard time. He doesn't seem to want to dwell on them, but then at the same time does. There's a lot of kind of confusion and confliction for me in some of the things that he says in 1 minute and then the other. Obviously, we saw the Christian Romero calling out bit, followed by the Timo Werner stance. We've seen the fact that he says, with his transfer policy, lots of different kind of takes on that kind of conflict with each other. Back in the day, I've said it 1,000 times, he says he prioritises mentality over technicality. He thinks the difference at the very top is the mentality side, and that's what he looks for, but he's on board with a transfer policy of youth-centric when those people couldn't possibly have sort of demonstrated that ability of mentality, monster-esque behaviour at such a young age. It's not even a physical part of your brain's construction and development yet. And then, at the same time, mixed in and amongst that kind of, those two contrasting opinions, also says, I don't particularly like playing with established players. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, yada, yada, yada. I like being able to mould players into my own perspective. And then more recently has said that we've got enough young players now, we need some established players to come in and help the team out, which is the most recent sort of statement around his desires for transfer policy. And then also at the same time, in yesterday's press conference, was talking about how great he felt that the summer transfer window was, and that the youth-centric approach was absolutely reasonable. And now we've gone and signed a 21-year-old goalkeeper who obviously, again, can't possibly have demonstrated this mental resilience thing that he would like to see, and doesn't obviously align with his most recent statement regarding he would like to see some more established players coming in. Now, obviously, the goalkeeper is a weird one because you can't really expect Tottenham to go and sign an established player unless you're going to go down the path of the declining one at 35, 36, which we already have in Fraser Forster. We've gone after this guy, Antonin Kinski, who, as I said to you before on yesterday's video, I can't remember the circumstances. I think it might have been last January or maybe the summer before, when we were talking about on the show, one of the shows, we got out the Y Scout tool and we were looking at goalkeepers who, rather than giving Fraser Forster the new contract extension. And he popped up just because of the way that we dialed up the filters, and we looked into him. And I remember saying at the time, he looked like a goalkeeper with great distribution, and the shot stopping could be a little bit, obviously you go to YouTube and you see the highlight reel, all you're going to see is the best saves he's ever done. And I've done that recently, I did that this morning, and yeah, he looks like a great shot stopper if you just look at that stuff. But if you go to the Y Scout tool and you can sort of dial into his everything reel, then you see some hazardous ones as well. But he's only 21 years old, big, tall, strapping guy, good with his feet, which is unusual, right? You usually get kind of smaller goalkeepers that are good with their feet. He's a big guy and is good with his feet. The one thing I think he's really good at is his positional play with regards sort of getting set up for for shots and for sort of being closing off the angle. He looks like he's pretty accomplished at that. I've seen a few examples where he's started to come out to play that sweeper keeper role and then decided he wasn't going to make it in time and then backtracked and then subsequently got rounded by the striker or the guy with the ball. So some of that maybe timing or decision making might be a little bit haphazard as well. So lots of positives that might fit the system, lots of things that could be a little bit, I guess, questionable. But like I say, at 21 years old, apparently he's coming in to compete for the first 11 spot. I'm not sure if that's just a way of saying, listen, don't worry about the fact we've got 7 goalkeepers at the club. You are going to be a participant here. Or whether they genuinely believe that this guy is the next big thing. But at 21 years old, you know, it's a very early stage of a goalkeeper's career. And it's big words to say that he's coming in to compete for the first 11. Now, whether that means just whilst, you know, Vicario's out and Fraser Forster's obviously lost his confidence, they're not quite ready about Brandon Austin. But again, like I said yesterday, I thought Brandon Austin did really well. And I think that he should be absolutely proud this morning and waking up probably a little bit kind of crestfallen to think that they've decided he's clearly not in the first team plans if they've gone and signed the 21-year-old who's 5 years younger than him. Now, I would also make the argument, I've said this 1,000 times, that Brandon Austin should have by now, for what it's worth, moved on and got himself some more regular first-team football. I think he played 6 times in Florida, and that's his only real competitive football ever been played, at 26. Same with Alfie Whiteman. I think he's 26. And Alfie Whiteman as well. There's something about that mentality to me that feels a little bit like, don't get me wrong, if you're getting paid 10 grand a week, it's not a lot for it as a goalkeeper, as a footballer, but £500,000 a year to basically turn up to training a couple hours a day and then go home and do whatever you're doing, it's not a bad life to live and build for yourself. But if you're good enough to have got to the point where you could be in contention at Tottenham Hotspur, then you know you shouldn't. I don't think you should take that kind of talent that you have for granted. I think you should go and have tried yourself at a more competitive level than before now. But look, it was on that basis that I was terrified about whether or not he was going to be able to cope with the pressure yesterday. And I thought that he did really well. And I thought that Ange Postecoglou was right to take away some of the tactical pressures on the goalkeeper, given it's his debut, by giving him, I think it was a clear indication to say, if you want to kick the ball long, kick the ball long. You know, don't worry about it. Just focus on your game and we can add that stuff in later. Which again, guys, goes back to some of the kind of analysis that I've seen or the kind of the way that people interpret what we saw yesterday. People saying Ange won't change. And I've been saying that Ange says he won't change, and therefore you have to shake hands with it. But yesterday was a clear demonstration of it was the most different version of Tottenham Hotspur that I've ever seen, and under Ange, that is. You know, Serge Reguilon coming on, he wasn't inverting. People saying, oh, these bloody inverted fullbacks and the wingers don't do anything. And I agree about the wingers not tracking back and doing enough. That's a massive problem for me and an area that Tottenham need to go and focus on. And whether or not I get to it in this video, I probably won't. I'm probably going to round this off and just keep this about the reflections. I'll do a second video straight after that I'll put out about an hour after this one goes up regarding Tottenham's transfer news, views and clues, because there's a lot to get through on that one today and it's quite an interesting one. But this idea that Tottenham didn't invert or doesn't invert, like that, we have to put that one to bed. And I think that now, if you are not a fan, but you are a manager who's looking at Tottenham Hotspur, I said 1,000 times, Tottenham are the team that can benefit the most in the Premier League from changing just once. Because if you're predicting the typical Tottenham, then it's a benefit to the opposition managers that they don't have, especially if they're playing 2 games a week, that they don't have to sort of dedicate any time on the training ground to worrying about Tottenham's plan B or plan C, or looking at the SWOT analysis that Tottenham don't really ever do themselves, because Tottenham always do the same thing. But yesterday was a completely different version of Tottenham. The high line was not there, and it hasn't been anywhere near as high in the last month. I think that anyone who looks at that and thinks that it is the same, I don't know what games you're watching. But yesterday you saw Pedro Porro overlapping the drifting out wide of Dejan Kulusevski, and Brennan Johnson was standing there in each other's way. 3 of them, all 3 feet from the touchline. Serge Reguilon on the other side, overlapping on the outside of Sonny in the second half. And I think that, you know, James Maddison drifting out to the left, Decky drifting out to the right. I think that there was an entire almost abdication of the middle ground in that game, which is the entire opposite of what you would normally ascribe to Tottenham Hotspur under the typical Ange ball version. And for people to sit there and for me to hear that stuff last night, people saying, oh, Tottenham are never going to change, Ange is a one-trick pony. I think yesterday, guys, was the first demonstration, the clear, obvious demonstration that he is putting something else in there, whether it's by hook or by crook, whether it's the players taking the ball by the horns and saying, no, we're doing this our own way, whether it's the fact that Serge Reguilon is not a natural inverted fullback and the fact that he had to come in, the fact that Jed Spence was put to right back or right-sided centre-back rather, and for what it's worth, I thought did a fantastic job. The fact that all of these things were materialising by force, I don't know whether it was by Ange's design, but for anyone to sit there and say that the tactics are the same every week after last night, or after yesterday, sorry, I think that was the first impression for me that that's not necessarily the case, and it's a really reassuring and a wonderful thing to think that now other managers have to consider, if they were watching the game the same way that I saw it, which was there was a different version of Tottenham on display, and one that I was very proud of for the effort from the boys, albeit we weren't good enough on the day, but Newcastle are a very strong team and played the game, played the rules very well. The next managers coming up possibly now have to think about, well, can we just tell the other team, can we just tell our team just to pop the balls into the channels, because Pedro Porro will be closer to the centre circle than he will be to the touchline, and the same with insert left back there. I don't think that's necessarily as easy a conversation now. If all it had to do was to be seen once, and then from then on, every manager coming up will have to bake in the possibility that the fullbacks might not invert. And I don't think they did yesterday. They weren't entirely conventional the entire time. There were obviously moments when the fullbacks did come in as part of the triangle setup of the way we moved the ball forward. But for the most part, Pedro Porro and Dejan Kulusevski were seen on the right-hand side, kind of in Brennan Johnson's space. And for the most part, Sonny and Serge Reguilon were very close to the touchline. And I think that that's a worthwhile, notable difference that, as I said, should have some indirect benefits in the ability for other managers to be able to prepare for. Having said all that, I'm still open-minded if you disagree with me fundamentally. You know, I will always hear your thoughts on it. But I just think that this notion that Tottenham are always playing the same style, yesterday that wasn't the case, and it's a nice thing to see. And I think we should recognise that, applaud that, and hopefully see more of it. Being a little bit less predictable, for me, is one of the... Unpredictability is the second best ability. I think I'll be going for 17 minutes, guys, so... Well, I'll round off and I'll do a separate transfer news views includes video, but as I say, usually I wake up the day after the night before and go, well, I was really over the top, I was emotional, I was angry or whatever, and this is how I feel now, slightly different. I actually feel like I'm going to double down and say, well done Ange, well done the boys, well done Brandon, well done Jed, well done to the youngsters, Lucas Bergvall. Again, been talking about players like Maxence Caqueret and how wonderful I think he would be in the Tottenham system. You go back 18 months and you look at Maxence Caqueret's form and you see a very similar sort of performance as what you saw from Lucas Bergvall yesterday. Young, nimble, naive sometimes, not going to get it right all the time, but someone who wants to be on the ball, desperate for the ball, which is, if you've got a hunger to be on the ball at 18 years old, you've got a mentality that I think is only going to be a really valuable key part of your development as a player. And I was really impressed. And like I say, I'm a big fan of Maxence Caqueret, and he's available probably because of Lyon's issues with financial situations, and whether Tottenham want to pivot towards a kind of 8 that can play more as that 6, especially in a world where there is going to be more of a distribution, an even balanced distribution of the fullback setup. The reason why Ange doesn't necessarily want to play a 6 most of the time is because he wants those fullbacks to do that job for him, come in and play almost like a triple pivot or a double pivot through the 6s that are actually the fullbacks, and then you've got more room to have 2 8s, which can progress the ball up the pitch a lot quicker. If you're going to let Pedro Porro be a little bit more traditional, and if you're going to ask Jed Spence or Serge Reguilon or whoever to be a little bit more traditional, then there's even more need for that 6. As I said, I think I've always said that Tottenham need a monster 6. We haven't got one. Yesterday was the green shoots of demonstrations to me that maybe Lucas Bergvall could be that guy. I think it's still far too small a sample size and far too early to pinpoint what is the best role for him. But his ability to control the tempo, to know when to speed it up and to know when to slow it down. He can drive with the ball as well. Don't forget, the first goal that we scored started with him driving down the right-hand side before he put in Pedro Porro for that delicious cross. And got onto the end of a wonderful diving header from Dominic Solanke. So I look at Lucas Bergwijn yesterday and think, I'm so happy we've got him. And if he can stay injury-free and he can keep his head on, his shoulders and feet on the ground, then the sky's the limit for this kid. And then you've got also the guy behind him, Archie Gray, who, again, playing out of position, not necessarily is always going to be flawless and faultless, but the benefits of going through this tough time for people so young and the demonstrations of their desires and their willingness to do whatever's necessary for the team, they're just brilliant characteristics. And I choose to look at this system in this and this situation that we find ourselves in, and the way that Ange can represent it philosophically as smooth waters will arrive. I'm not sure if he'll be given the time. I'm not sure if the cup exits that are probably going to happen against Liverpool, for example, I'm not sure if that is going to be too strong of a catalyst and too loud of a noise for the owner to kind of fight against. And a lot of people will have their way. But right now, I said before that I was waiting for the cup exits before I could really kind of go Ange out. I think I'm going to be, you can call me a flip-flop if you want, but after what I saw yesterday, the team being behind the players, the team being behind the manager, the effort that was on display, and also just this unbelievable strength of character in some of our young players, I'm choosing to zoom out a little bit and think about the bigger picture. And I'm still remaining very positive about Tottenham Hotspur's opportunity and our prospects going forward. Let me know your thoughts. Bugsy doesn't feel the same, by the way. Whenever I mention Ange, she barks because I think she's had enough, but I haven't. And yeah, maybe that will change. Maybe that will change. Listen, I'm always open-minded. Your mind should be like a parachute. It only works when it's open. Like, subscribe and comment, guys. And as always, bye-bye.